In this one I'll be showing you how to add animations to your website when you scroll. So you can take your website from this dual non-animated one to a fully animated website. We'll be going over element detection, how to add custom logic whenever an element is detected, what should be the threshold to the detection, and we'll also be adding animations to it that way. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. To start this off, I do have a fully built website for this one because that's what makes things interesting. So here our index.html is fully filled up, so it's broken up into sections, and it's important because these individual sections are what we are going to animate later. But for now, don't worry about it. We do have a script.js linked and our style.css linked. Our style.css is also filled with all the stylings, but here I just prefer to close it because we'll be creating some separate classes, and our script.js is of course completely empty. Now the first thing to do when dealing with these animations is, first of all, how do we detect whether something is on the screen and should be animated? To that we'll be starting off in our script.js. So first of all, in our script.js we should get all the elements that we'd like to animate. How do we do that? Well, we need classes. So first of all, let's create a class that will tag all the animatable objects. I will call this class AnimeReady. We won't be putting any styling in it for now, but I've created it because we will be. And what we need to do now is come to our sections. This will be one that I'd like to animate. This is the left section, which is basically, if you are viewing a desktop, it's the left section, it's the stop section. We also need this menu section to be animated, the base info of the contact, and the contact form. So here I just put in to every place, I just put in the AnimeReady class. And now what we can do is come to our script.js, create a new constant variable called scrollAnimeObjects. And this will be a selection, so document.querySelectorAll. And we are selecting the AnimeReady classes. So all those 4 elements will be selected. And next, here comes the trickier part, because the detection in JavaScript, there is a new system for it called intersection observer. And this intersection observer will observe certain elements, and these certain elements can be manipulated whenever they are in the screen given to a certain threshold. So I'll just create an observer, const observer. This will be equal to a new intersection observer. So this is a new class, and it takes back a callback function and some options. Basically, just give it an arrow function for now, an empty arrow function, and it will later take in an options parameter. This is an optional parameter, so we can actually omit this for now. What I'd like to do is console log this observer. If you take a look at this observer, there are a bunch of settings here. I will be making a separate video of this. Basically, you can set a root margin, so you can clip down certain detection ranges of the observer. There are thresholds here, so you can set different thresholds for its visibility. Here you can see some default functions we'll be using. For example, the observe function will be used to give into the array, to put into the array the objects that we'd like to animate, and the unobserved will be used to remove them once they are animated. I just wanted to console log this whole thing out so you can see, but we'll be going over its functions. So the callback function of this intersection observer takes in a parameter by default, just like any event would, but this one is called entries basically. And by entries, I mean the objects that are being observed. If we would to console log out the entries array right now, it would be empty. To push something into this entries object, what we need to do is, for example, go over all the scrollAnime objects. So scrollAnime objects.for each, and here we'll be saying observer.observe. As I said, this is a basic function for pushing an element to the entries array, and we'll be pushing the anime object in there. And now I console logged out the entries, and as you can see, 4 elements are already in there. These are intersection observer entries, which basically have a bunch of values. they have the bounding client reg. This is important to detect where the element actually is. There is also the most important element for us is intersecting, which means is it inside the screen. And there is also the target, which is basically just the element that we've pushed in. You can see it's a div. So now what we'll be doing is going over all the entries. So entries.forEach, give it an arrow function, and we'll be putting here an if statement. So if the entry.is intersecting, which means basically is it inside the screen, then what we do is call entry.target, which is basically the target that we've given it. In this example, those are all divs. And here we'll be doing something with that target. In this example, to make something animated, we need to give it classes. So for example, entry.target.classlist.add, and we'll be adding something like visible. So let's jump to our CSS and create this class called visible. What we'll be needing to set here is, for example, a transform translate x0. This will put it back to its place. And for different type of animations, I will also be creating some few classes like slide from right. And what this is going to do is transform translate x minus 200 pixels, 200 pixels. This will be added by default to an object to offset it, and by offsetting it, it will be half of the screen, so we can animate it right back in. I will be copying this one more time, and this time it will be slide from the left side, and it will be minus 200 pixels. I will be closing up the console and giving them here. So I gave the left classes, it's time to add the right classes as well here. Slide from right, and to the other object as well, the context form. And as you can see, they are a little bit offset now, each and every one of them. And that's exactly what we want. And also to make them smooth, I'll select both classes, and we'll be saying transition, transform, 0.5 seconds, ease in out. And we'll be saying the same for the opacity. Now here, please note that I will copy this visible class from up here to the bottom of the CSS, because it needs to override all the sliding animations, because if it was defined before those, then it wouldn't be able to override the translate X and the animation wouldn't be working. So now if I just simply scroll down, you can see these come in, and as you can see, they are a little bit pushed aside but still visible, and that's important because this is how you'll be able to play around with a little bit of opacity. So since they are a little bit visible still, what we need to do in the Animate class is give them an opacity of 0 so they are hidden. That's super great, but then we won't be able to see them. And the reason I called the other class visible is because here we also need to give an opacity 1 to make them visible again whenever they are in the screen. But as you can see, they animate in almost immediately. And that's not very good because you can only see the animation if you scroll fast enough. So what we need to do to come into the script.js is put a comma in here after the end of the object and call the options object. Inside this options object, there is something called a threshold. Now this threshold takes in a value between 0 and 1. 0 will mean basically 0%, 1 will mean 100%, and the meaning of this is how much of the object should be on the screen before it signals to the observer that the object is intersecting. And this is not the same as whether it's visible or not, because by setting the opacity to 0, the object is still there, so the observer will see it, it's just the user that won't. So by setting this to 0.5, which means 50%, it will wait until 50% of the object is visible. So now if I scroll down, even if I scroll slowly, you can see the animations happening. Basically you are done, but pay very good attention that the visible class should be defined after all the animation classes, or you could hard code them and make them removed and added, but this is a more general reusable approach. And also a few things here, what I like to do is call the entry.target.classlist.remove. So we first of all remove the Animate class, just a safety measure here. And not only that, but for memory saving purposes, because once you've animated in the object, you don't want to deal with it anymore, you call the observer.unobserve, which will take the object out of the intersection observer, and here you give the entry.target. So basically, by removing it from the observer, you lose nothing, but you gain some memory back because in the background the observer won't be working anymore. And basically we are done. This is our little scrolling animation. It's a very simple approach, and I hope it helped you out. If it did and you found value in this video, please consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next one. God bless.